What we're looking at here is a solution to a problem in wastewater that's been around for a number of years, which is when you've got lift stations, they're all remote, and you need to monitor them because maybe the pumps fail, maybe something goes wrong, maybe the power fails, and nobody knows until the wastewater runs in the street. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. So what we've come up with Rattler, which as you know is remote monitoring and control, is a method of providing alarming, alerting and management for wastewater lift stations. And what we have here is in fact a typical setup with all the elements you need, and you can see it's actually quite small, it just fits in a small little cabinet, to be able to inexpensively monitor and manage your lift stations to provide a more reliable wastewater treatment for your citizens so they don't end up with the sewage flowing in the street, because you get an early alarm when something's gone wrong. What we have here is the typical equipment that's in a small cabinet at a remote lift station. And I'm going to go through each of the elements in turn so that you can see how straightforward it is to manage and monitor and control all the critical elements that make up a lift station. This is an incoming power supply with a line power and a circuit breaker. This over here is what we call the last gas battery. What it does is it provides battery power in the event of the mains failing so that the Rattler can still communicate with Glance and with the central and report that the AC power has failed. You don't need to have somebody go out and check it, because this battery will keep the system up to be able to report it. This over here is the antenna. This does both the GPS and the cellular communications. Some terminals. This is the brains of the remote monitoring and control. This is the Rattler 3 that you're seeing here. And this has a cell phone and a GPS, and the inputs and outputs to monitor analog and digital inputs and have some outputs that provide remote monitoring control. And this is what communicates up to the cloud to tell you when there's trouble. Here are some conditioning relays, and what they do is they convert 240 volt or 480 volt or 110 volt into the 24 volt signals that the Rattler needs, 12 to 24 volt. Over here are two 4 to 20 milliamp power conditioning monitors. What they do is you want to know the quality of the AC that's coming in, and you want to know the quality of the generator power. Now this is this application has a standby generator, and that is why we have two of these, one for the AC power and one for the generator. This is a 24 volt power supply that provides a isolated loop power for the 4 to 20 milliamp inputs. And these all come through this wiring into the Rattler and communicated to the cloud up into Glance. What you see over here is a set of switches. Now this is the secret of staging everything here at the IATL, is all these applications in the field, we reproduce them here so that we are able to test and configure them to make sure they're all working properly. And if there's a fault reported from the field, we can test it over here. So what I'm going to do, and we're going to have a look at Glance in a minute, and what we'll see is that if the AC failed, I can simulate that by switching like that, and then the generator comes on and kicks in again. And you'll see all of that is reported up into Glance, where you can see that such an AC failure has occurred. And in fact, on my watch, you see a Glance alarm, and it's reported that that the lift station type 1 has reported an AC fail. And so that's how instant it is to get an alert that this substation has failed. Now what you do is you go and check in at Glance, and you see what's happening, and lo and behold, you'll see, oops, it was just a temporary alarm because the AC came back, the substation recovered, the generator turned off by itself. And this is how you do remote monitoring and management of a lift station. And lo and behold, on my watch here, it says lift station type 1 is reported AC restored. That's how effective it is to do remote management and control, monitoring and control, with a comparatively simple and inexpensive set of equipment that works cost effectively and efficiently. What you see here is the glance user interface and how we monitor and manage lift stations through this glance user interface, the Rattler glance interface. You can log on, and what it does, it presents you with a map, and what you can see is some trails by mobile devices and things like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to look down here, and we saw that the lift station was on this list, and this gives you an indication of that it's not an alarm, and it gives you all the parameters of this lift station, the AC voltage and the generator power and so forth, the temperature, and all the status of the pumps. And you can see pump 1 is off and pump 2 is on, the mixer is on and the cabinet door is closed and so forth. There's no fault, which is the little red light that's on top of these lift stations, and that illuminates in the event of there being a fault. Interestingly enough, that what we've added for lift stations and industrial monitoring is our remote hour meters. These are really important for maintenance and knowing the status of equipment, that service intervals are done on hours. And this increments the pump 1 increments when the pump 1 is on, pump 2 increments when pump 2 is on, and so forth, mixer when, so forth. These graphs illustrate some recent history over the last week. And this is, interestingly enough, a power failure yesterday of a couple of hours. And you can see that the line power went out. And what happened is that the generator kicked in. And this is typical how you visualize data to tell you a story of what happened at the lift station. At this situation, they've got standby generators. In other situations, they don't, and then you're just in trouble when the power fails. It gives some quite interesting information about utilization. And so, for example, this is the pump 1 hours graph, which actually shows a sort of pretty horizontal line. Pump 1 never goes on. That indicates a fault if you're trying to do load leveling between the two pumps, because pump 1 never goes on. But pump 2 went on with a pattern like this. These slopes of these graphs indicate utilization, and the trend line shows the utilization percent and so forth of how much these pumps are being utilized. This is actually when the hour meter was reset. There's a way of resetting it to the correct information that's actually on the mechanical hour meter that's out in the field. But if somebody looks at this every day and looks at the hours over here, they can actually don't have to travel to the field. They can see the hour meter running on the user interface. What this does is the minimum and the maximum tells you how many hours the pump has run in the last 24 hours. Again, this is quite information which can be produced into all sorts of usable reports, including things like the utilization of when the pump was on and off and so forth. Allows for some really effective reports to be written and to be viewed as far as the utilization. What you do see is more details. This is the detailed information, the raw information of what's come back from the device, including things like its GPS coordinates and all kinds of things, the SIM card number. And this is for remote diagnostics, not required by the user, because what they see is that the information they need is all on what we call level 1 and level 2. And what I'm going to do is simulate a power supply failure, and what you'll see is an alarm coming through to glance to show how an alarm is dealt with. Here, a click of the alarm. I wait for the alarm to come through on my phone. There, the alarm comes through on my phone. Lift station type 1 reported AC fail. I come into glance and I have a look. And now you can see on the list on the left-hand side that the lift station is now number 1 on the list. It's got an alarm. you can look at the alarms this way. You can see the lift station type 1 has reported AC fail. You can see that alarm over here. And so you can immediately see that this requires attention. It doesn't need you to call the lift station maintenance company. It needs you to call the power company because there's been an AC fail. But as I said, it was a short duration alarm which went away. So what we'll do is we'll put the power back to being restored. I'll wait for the alarm to come through on my phone here, which it comes through right now. It says that there's the fault has been cleared, and now you can see on the glance user interface that the fault is cleared, and you got line power back to some kind of a normal value over here. And that's how simple it is to be able to do remote monitoring and control of lift stations anywhere from anywhere.